Now this keyboard right here is very shiny. But as any failed marriage proposal will tell you, sometimes you need a little bit more than shiny. Howdy, I'm Hipyo Tech, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the Epomaker HS84. It's a pretty cool board, but it's got a couple of glaring issues if you're an enthusiast. But don't worry, I'll be talking about those later, so stick around. Full disclosure here, this board was sent to me by Epomaker for free for review. If you want to check it out and support the channel, please click that link down in the description. This board comes in at around $76 US. I feel like this makes it a pretty good budget option. However, there's also a few reasons why I wouldn't recommend it, especially over Epomaker's other option, the EP84. This is part of Epomaker trying to move into making their own boards, and I think it's a step in the right direction, but they also took a couple bad missteps here and there. The overall unboxing experience was quite nice, it was a well-branded box, and overall got me excited for the board. The board's also relatively sturdy at 870 grams, and the box came with a manual that was really well written. Other than that, the unboxing experience was pretty bare bones. It included your typical USB-C cable, which was medium quality at best, and just a keycap puller and switch puller. I personally really don't like these cheap ones, but I guess it's good they included it. Let's take a look at the board. So this is a 75% board, which is personally my favorite layout. However, they opted for a pretty cramped version of 75% and decided not to go for any blockers. I personally feel that this makes the right side of the board a little bit congested, but to each their own. The case is decently good quality and is made of a frosted ABS. It's not groundbreaking or anything, but it definitely felt better than some of the other thin plastic options at this price point. This board in general is a big RGB hound, and they also included double shot ABS keycaps, which are very thin and pretty bad quality. If you're going for a full RGB look, I would definitely recommend some puttings on this thing. The back of the board looks a little bit tacky, but the bottom of the PCB is lined with RGB LEDs, so you can get some pretty cool underglow effects from it. Anyways, let's hit it with a classic knock test. The board has a pretty cheap feel to it, and when knocking on it, you can hear the springs pinging around in it. Speaking of which, let's talk about those springs in those switches. This board comes with Gateron switches, and you have the options between yellows, browns, blacks, blues, or reds. I have Gateron browns here, which are more of like a scratchy, very light tactile switch, but I was supposed to get the version with Gateron yellows. Personally, I would only really recommend getting the yellow version, but if you need something heavier, Gateron blacks wouldn't be that bad either. One really nice feature of this board is that it offers Hotswap sockets. This means that if you wanted to mod all of your switches, you could pull them out and replace them very easily. Also, the stabilizers came pre-lubed, but they weren't lubed very well, and they could definitely use a band-aid mod. Alright, now I told you there would be some bad parts to this board, and let's talk about those bad parts. Unlike the EP84, this board uses raised SMD LEDs. This means that the LEDs sit above the PCB and could potentially interfere with your switches. This is opposed to the standard, which is where they sit flush with the PCB. This is a massive oversight with the board, and honestly one of the biggest cons. I have a really hard time recommending it, simply because it makes it so you can't use a lot of really good switches, such as the JWK series. So here's a nice little example of our problem. On the left, you see the Gateron brown, which has a nice little cutout for that LED to sit in. On the right, we have the Durock L4, a common linear switch. Any switch that doesn't have that cutout for the LED will not be compatible with this board whatsoever. This could be a non-issue if, for example, you just wanted to use the Gateron yellows and lube them up without having to desolder. But if you wanted to switch to other switches, definitely consider a different board. Anyways, let's get into the fun gamer part, the RGB. This board has full RGB per key lighting and full RGB underglow. This makes it very shiny as previously stated, and honestly quite nice. However, I do feel like the keycaps are a bit lacking as they're pretty thin double shot ABS. Also, on the bottom here, you see some foam. This is from a different project, and ignore that as it won't be in the board. They decided to opt for a bunch of really small RGB LEDs for the bottom, which I think adds a cooler effect, but it also added a lot of flickering in my footage. As far as software support goes, I couldn't find anything on the Epomaker website, and I think you're stuck with whatever's baked into the board. This board has some pretty interesting macro configurations, and a whole lot of lighting configurations. I don't really show them all here, but if you like RGB, you'll probably have a good time with this board. Also, I think filling the bottom with some type of foam to diffuse the lights definitely improves the look of these, as it gets rid of a bit of the singular RGB look. Single color LED options are also available, but I feel like these were a little bit limited, and they kind of left me wanting more. Anyways, I'm gonna give you guys a quick sound test of the stabilizers, and then we'll get into more of the nitty gritty. The stabilizers are nothing to write home about, and I definitely recommend modding them. However, the spacebar was kinda nice. If I had to give my final thoughts on this board, I definitely recommend spending $10 more and opting for the Epomaker EP84. That thing includes foam, and overall is just leagues ahead of this board. It's also worth noting that the EP84 doesn't have the same LED issue, so definitely click that link in the top right to check out my full review. Anyways, I'm gonna leave you guys with a sound test, and please make sure you watch the whole thing to support my YouTube algorithm overlords. If you like this video, remember to give it a like, hit subscribe, and do a sound test of your own in the comments. Also, consider joining the Watering Hole gang by clicking that little join button down below. And thanks to Aquarius for being a member of the Hipyo's Chosen tier.